25th meeting of the Maplewood City Council 2021. Call it to order. Tonight, I wanted to start out our council meeting with maybe an often overlooked resource in our community, and that is the Ramsey County Library System. I received the Explore, which is the newsletter from the Ramsey County Library. It's their news and events. And I wanted to highlight it because I realized all of the things that Ramsey County continues to do throughout the pandemic. I certainly have been a valued customer over at the Maplewood Library and used their resources many, many, many times. Not so much, obviously, during COVID, but I wanted to highlight for people that the library really has a whole catalog of different things, virtual programming that they are offering during the pandemic. And it's all free, including book clubs and chats about short stories and poetry. There are 3 different book clubs that are happening. There are Zoom, and all of this is all virtual. There are history events that are happening throughout the month, covering a wide array of topics. There's also community and well-being events that are offering virtual programming on everything from meditation to community conversations on race, conversations with constituents, that's with our legislators. Those are happening on Zoom. There's also a whole series of virtual technology events. If you want to learn more about social media or password management or how to protect your privacy online, the Ramsey County Library has a lot of different virtual programming that they're offering. And this is really a valuable asset for families as well, because there are kids events from virtual story times to a virtual family chess night to yoga, books and baking. There's weekly teen contests. So there is a whole variety of things, and you can either pick up this Explore newsletter at the library, or you can go to the Ramsey County Library website and check it out for yourselves, because there's a lot of great things that are happening, and it's free. And it is it's a really nice opportunity during the pandemic when most of our activities are limited to try some new things. There's also an app that you can get that connects gives you information about discovering local Ramsey County parks. And there's a whole list of different reading opportunities for adults where there are discussion opportunities. So please check out that resource. It looks like it is a great opportunity for everyone to find something new and different during the pandemic. So with that, let us move then to our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Sint, would you do the roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Juneman.
Here.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Here.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here. We move on our agenda. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Moved by Villavicencio, seconded by Juneman, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Juneman.
Oh, never mind. I'll wait till after we have the presentations. Go ahead.
Do you want to add it at presentations?
No, it's fine. Just leave it. I can comment then. It's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I would like to add Coming Home Ramsey. And I'll add that to the agenda. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, then let's vote. We're going to use the same order. Knutson, Villavicencio, Cave, and then Juniman. Councilmember Knutson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next item is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the January 11th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next item is the appointments and presentations. City Manager Coleman, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Tonight, we have the calendar is really just a way to kind of project to you what we see on the upcoming agendas. At our next meeting on February 8th, we're going to have a report on our 2020 and 2020 strategic plan, because or is it the first quarter? No, last quarter of 2020, sorry. And then either on February 8th or the second meeting on the 22nd, we'll have a fire station update on the construction and where we're headed on that. In terms of council comments and things that staff have been working on, at our last meeting, there was a request to have the city attorney, Mr. Beatty, talk about rules regarding approval of minutes. And that report from him is attached in your packets, the second page. In conclusion, what Attorney Beatty said is that there's no statutory or city authority directly that addresses whether members who were not present at a city council may vote on the approval of its minutes, but common parliamentary procedure authority suggests that such members may vote on approval of minutes regardless of whether the members were absent or are new members. And so basically we could have accepted our two new members' votes if they wish to vote. I think that's where we sort of got hung up, because we've never been asked by members who weren't at the meeting or sworn in yet. So that kind of puzzled us at the moment, but Mr. Beatty has now addressed that for your information. And then also I forgot to put on here, but we really also brought up the idea of doing quarterly financial reporting. And Ms. Paulseth and myself will make a commitment to doing that for you on a quarterly basis at our meetings, as well as the monthly reports that you get from our finance director. And with that, Mayor, I'd be happy to listen to any concerns or issues that you would like staff to look into on your behalf.
Sorry, my mute button was not, couldn't hit it fast enough. Thank you. I wanted to bring up something that has been floating around for a little while. And I'm going to suggest that, or I'd like to see if my other council members concur with me, to get some staff research concerning parking and development. There was an article in the St. Paul Pioneer Press this morning, and it really was about Oakdale and Woodbury and what they're doing concerning parking. You know, we have, when we have a new development coming in, there's always a question about how much parking is required. And parking is, it's a changing topic. It's very fluid because things are changing. As people are shopping more and more online, there is less and less of a need to have these football-sized parking lots. The way that, we used to look at this was kind of planning for what is going to be the busiest shopping day in December. And that is really the parking that you need to provide for any type of development. And that really is kind of an old way of thinking. This came up most recently. I think I mentioned last council meeting that I did a Zoom conference with other mayors, with the regional mayors and ULI. And it was, the topic was on post-pandemic planning and transportation patterns and parking and shopping were all subjects that were brought up and discussed, and suggested that each community should really start taking a look at that and seeing whether or not what we have in our ordinances really doesn't fit the way people shop today. Or for instance, do banking. The Pioneer Press talked about that this morning, that banks were required to have parking lots that really could accommodate the number of people that would be coming and depositing their paychecks on Friday afternoon. And, most people have direct deposits. And so things have changed. And what I would like to suggest is that we do a deep dive into our parking requirements in our city and take a look at, do they really fit where we are and where we're going? I would, maybe what staff could do is take a look at that article. It was just in the Pioneer Press this morning. And basically what communities are considering is really putting their parking lots on a diet. It's going to be an issue that's going before the Oakdale City Council. Home Furniture is proposing to go into the old theater complex that was closed during the pandemic. And they are indicating that they don't need that kind of volume of parking because it just doesn't match the way people are shopping today. And so I think it's a very timely issue. I'd like to have staff take a look at it and do some research about what's happening out there. What are other communities doing? What are our ordinances? And do we need to maybe update them? If you drive around and look up at the mall, or if you even look at St. John's Hospital, those are football size parking lots. And do we really need that today? I think that getting some additional information from staff would be very helpful. So I would recommend that. Let's hear other council members concerning that topic. Councilmember Knudsen.
Thank you, Mayor. I sit on planning and design review, and I got to tell you, our staff is very, very thoughtful, and very, I should say, flexible in how it works. They have, when there needs to be a variance, I think they find one. But I do support what you're saying. I think it would just be easier for everyone to understand the changes are occurring. But I agree. I just wanted to support that our staff are currently very, very flexible and looking at the actual situation. So.
No doubt our staff are very, very flexible. But I think we really need to kind of get a better understanding, from the council's perspective.
Agreed.
And one of the things I would suggest is that the Planning Commission be very involved in this, gathering information and what are their thoughts. And the question too is, if we are doing so many variances, really, does that really speak to then the quality of the ordinance that we have, or maybe needing to update the ordinance? I don't know, but I think it certainly warrants additional questions. And I'd really like to see the Planning Commission play a big role in that. So, Councilmember Villavicencio.
I don't have a lot of comments on that particularly. I agree with you, definitely. I mean, I think, especially when we look at the north end and the mall area, there's definitely improvements in that area specifically, where we can, break up some of that. And, I think it's stuff that we need to think about when we do development too, and how where we are putting the parking lots and how they are affecting the environment too. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cave.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think making sure the quality of our ordinances are held to a high standard is good. And if we are doing a lot of variances, which you do see why, I think this is an excellent way to tighten that. And also with staff working with other cities, so it's not them reinventing the wheel here, that we're going to use other people and other resources. I think that's wonderful. Good idea.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think there's a place in this particular topic for looking at what we did for a while, and we haven't done it enough, I don't think, is green parking, which is making it possible to expand if they needed it, but in the meantime, it would be green space. That's an oversimplification, but I brought up a few times, and even developers didn't think they wanted to do it that way, but it is a way to, so they are sort of semi-satisfied, if you will, on the fact that they could expand. And then there's also techniques for green parking, so you don't have to turn it into asphalt. So this would be a great place to bring that in, I think. And I think maybe to piggyback on what Councilmember Cave said, we look also at how the usage has changed for certain things besides retail. And I know that we have had some issues in the past, don't know if it will stay that way, but where churches are, they take over a building or they're in an area where there isn't enough parking. What do we know about that? And what do we need to do about that, if anything? If we're going to look at the thing, we need to look at the whole thing. Obviously, retail's big, but it's not the only thing. So those are my only comments. Thank you.
Great. City Manager Coleman, does that give you enough information?
Yes, Mayor, very good information. We'll pass that on and get working with that with the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and moving on to council presentations, I just wanted to update my fellow council members. I did attend the first meeting of Coming Home Ramsey. I'm on the governing board representing the suburban cities in Ramsey County. And I have to say, it was a good introductory meeting. The governing board was established and a steering committee was established as well. And it's really the first step in trying to come up with solutions for homelessness. The governing board is going to be meeting again in February. And I'll tell you this, that Wednesday night of this week, there will be an official count of the homeless, unsheltered in Ramsey County. And we should have some official numbers coming out very soon. And that will help us understand just really how widespread this issue is. I think the cohort is pretty excited is not the right word, but very anxious to get started on coming up with solutions and partnerships and trying to get a better handle on what options are there, because this is not, I think I've said this before, there's not one answer to solving the issue of homelessness in our community. So that's kind of it for that update.
Mary,
Yes,
Mayor,
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one question or concern about that, and I think you being on the governing board, you can probably help. I don't think they probably made a sufficient opportunity, I guess, for people who are homeless to be heard on the steering committee. And so if you could find out about that and how they plan to, if they're going to, actually talk to and bring in some homeless people occasionally, because I think they need more than providers and they need more than social work types. They need people who are having the difficulty to get a grip on it. So if you could keep an eye on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I certainly was paying attention to that as to the composition of the steering committee. And I can tell you that there were Ramsey County clients who currently are homeless. and are using are participating in different programs through Ramsey County that were actually on the call, the Zoom call. And so their voices were heard.
But beyond that, as the thing progresses, I hope they're going to be checked with. That's all I'm asking.
That's a very good point, and I will make sure that happens. So
thank you.
Input.
Mayor?
Okay.
Mayor?
Councilor Knudsen, yes.
Yeah, just as long as we're doing some updates, I attended the quarterly meeting of the District 623. I guess it was a regional meeting. Just as a little prep for another agenda item is I gave an update of what was going on in the city of Maplewood and described our task forces for nature center and parks. Well, that lit up the room. I mean, people were very enthused about what we're doing with Parks and Rec, and legislators and people from Ramsey County commissioners were on the call, and it just got a lot of warm response. So just thought I'd let you know that there were other things going on. They're talking about demographics and talking about their upcoming referendum and what their needs are. So it's always a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see, moving on our agenda, the next item is a resolution of appreciation for Chief Steve Lucan's service to Maplewood. And what we're going to start with is I'm going to read the resolution. We will take action on that. And Mr. Sharon, would you rather, I'm going to give you the option since you are our communications director. We have a fantastic video honoring Steve Lucan. Mr. Sharon, would you like to do the video first and then we can do the resolution?
Yes, that makes, Madam Mayor, Council, thank you. Yes, that makes sense. I'm going to play the video. And before I do, just a brief thank you to the Lucan family who really helped us, stepped up to the plate and really helped us capture and present some of what's in this video. A thank you to the folks who participated and to Kevin Schmitz, our city's digital communication specialist. Just one warning, some of you might have trouble viewing this only because of how big it is and trying to do something this large over Zoom. It depends on your internet speed at home. This will be on the internet, our webpage tomorrow. If you don't see it quite the way you should, you can always go back tomorrow and watch it. It's about an 11 and a half minute video. And with that, I will play the video. You should all be able to see a black screen.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, we can.
He loves the community, he loves the people here, and he just works his tail off to make sure everything is working right. He was born and raised here. He was a business owner here. He raised his family here, and he continues to live here.
But he was a member ever since he was a young kid of the Gladstone Fire Department. He has a lot of history within the city.
Being able to live and work in your community was right up there at the top, knowing so many of them and being able to help. He's courageous, he's strong, he's dedicated, he's thoughtful of others, mindful of people's safety.
I've never seen a harder working chief in any other organization than him. I mean, he's very hands-on, he gets involved, he's there with us doing everything.
He will probably push you out of the way to try and take a nozzle if he can, but he has no problem functioning in that line firefighter role or jumping in wherever he can.
If he's not doing chest compressions, he's supporting the family. I mean, I've been doing this for 27 going on 28 years. When I saw him on the first cardiac arrest, my first impression was the fire chief is doing CPR. And I'm looking around at everybody else thinking, why is that happening? Oh, it says full arrest. I'm like, you're about to see him run through these doors. And exactly what we were talking about.
You hear story after story with Steve Lucan where someone's basement is flooded. He and other people are coordinating to get the basement pumped out of water, or they know of a person in need in our community and they're bringing food.
For a short guy, he's got some big shoes that he walks around in. And I don't know that I could ever fill them. I can only hope that I can carry some of the traditions and work ethic and things like that he has in the department.
He's always been a firefighter's chief, always willing to teach you. When I started here, I was a 28-year-old kid. I
I didn't know a lot about being a fire chief, and so he's kind of been like a father figure to me, both personally and professionally. He taught me a lot about how to be a fire chief, what's required financially, politically, how to navigate with difficult people, how to have difficult conversations.
To get to the point that I have in my career, to have Steve as one of my supporters and hopefully me one of his supporters, it's allowed us to do better for the community. He really brought the needs of the citizen to the forefront and developed just an outstanding fire department. And I want them to really know that, because it wasn't easy. Those transition periods from paid on call to full-time firefighters, from a paramedic program that was loved, from the police department moving it into the fire department, those were very tough, hard negotiations. The fact that we could no longer sustain the paramedic program within the police service, and Steve kind of helped advance that forward by getting firefighters to go to medic school and become fire medics. Prior to that, I mean, the majority of the firefighters were just emergency medical technicians. They didn't have those advanced skills that a paramedic has.
Even when we were transitioning over and eliminating the cop medics and stuff like that, he really stuck up for all of us. He understood everything we've gone through and worked with and everything we've done together over the years. And that wasn't lost on him. And that continues to this day.
It's emotional when they leave, because that leaves a hole in a department. And when you look at how much he's done for this department, taking it from a 100% volunteer department to a paid on call department to a fully career department, I don't think anybody in the city would have ever expected Maplewood Fire to be a fully career department.
Steve is that guy that is constantly working with people and cares about people. And the relationships that he's had with our full-time staff and with retired firefighters, with our part-time staff when we had a part-time staff, were really key to getting through a difficult process in a way that was respectful to everyone.
His management style was a hard-nosed humanitarian.
He could take programs and make them work. The 800 megahertz radio system, which was implemented when I was still here, he took the bull by the horns there. He handled the purchasing of the radios and handled all that for the police and the fire department.
I think that's a really fitting kind of place for his emergency management career to wrap up.
By far, this pandemic will be almost at the very top of what we've had to do in my 43 years in the fire service.
On March 14th, we declared a disaster, and an emergency rather. And on that same day, I was already fielding calls from Steve in particular about PPE, how many PPE his crews are using when they're going into the scene, how he was addressing. It was kind of interesting because he addressed the fears of his staff with the realities as well.
We were well over probably 3,000 masks, if not more. And I would say in the gown side of it, we were probably in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 2,500.
In this pandemic, he's constantly out there when he gets reports of homeless people, trying to coordinate resources to make sure that the people in our community, whether they be a person that's lived here for 50 years or whether they're a person that's out on their block, has a safe place to stay, has food, has shelter.
Working through some of the issues that we've had with homelessness in our community, Steve goes above and beyond. One night, Steve was out looking at 7 o'clock at night for a homeless gentleman in our community to make sure that he had a safe place to stay.
In our communities, and particularly in your city, we had the right leadership in place in our public safety folks.
It's going to be difficult for Steve to just step away and step back from the fire service, because the fire service has been Steve.
He's talked about it for at least 10 years. Always said he was never going to retire, so I was very shocked to see him pull the pin.
It was not unusual for me and my wife and his wife to be out for dinner and him to leave in the middle of dinner to go on a fire call.
We joke that some of the things that he got away with his family, like abandoning them at restaurants and birthday parties and Christmas parties, etc., leaving his wife and 3 young daughters while he ran to a fire call. I joked with him just this week that if I pulled some of that stuff, I'd be divorced in a hurry.
It's a huge time commitment for the family, and his wife and his kids have endured 43 years of up and leaving.
To have 43 years in fire and EMS, you need to have a support system of both inside work and outside of work. So he demonstrated a great ability to integrate his family in what we're doing.
They were doing an open house at one of the fire stations, and there were more of Steve's kids and grandkids there working than there were firefighters.
His wife has shown up at an apartment fire to help stabilize a young person that had special needs because that was her career background. So he just called her up and she showed up and helped the family figure out what they're going to do now that they're displaced to this fire. That's not common in the fire service.
The next couple months are probably going to be tough for him because it's winter time and you're kind of stuck at home. I know he doesn't play golf, but he does like to hang out with his grandkids and get them out, have fun, try to relax.
But she's been retired about 3 years now, and so she got into the groove of it. And we both said there is no way both of us could be retired and home at that much at the same time, and I can't either. I love her to death, but it just won't work. So I definitely will try and find a part-time job.
Oh, yeah. About that. In 3 weeks, he'll have a job doing something else.
Sleep in, stop thinking about work, which he will not, and really, truly try to enjoy life outside of the city of Maplewood employment.
Having to worry about all your firefighters and paramedics and everyone in public safety in general being in harm's way every single day, to just being out of that, man, that's going to be very hard. Make your hobbies like your full-time job for the first 3 months to reprogram your brain on how to be a normal human being again.
He's been a great colleague. I got him.
I just hope Steve has a wonderful, wonderful retirement. He's certainly earned it after all these years.
Enjoy this time, Steve. Congratulations on your retirement. I want to thank you for the amazing amount of service you've provided the residents of Maplewood, the city councils that you've worked with, the city managers that you've worked with, and also for all the mentoring that you've done to others in your profession.
It's been a great ride. I've had so many great people to work with and that have worked for us. It's going to be a tough transition to leave that. All of a sudden, wake up one day and you find out you're no longer doing the job you've done for 43 years. Not looking forward to that, but I'm also looking forward to new things that'll be coming around the corner.
I met Steve in 1995 in Maplewood when I did arrive. Steve has worn several titles, including engineer, deputy chief, captain, and then appointed fire chief at the start of this century. His career with the city has been quite exemplary. Steve has seen many challenges over the 40-plus years, but this man stays positive, never shows any fears. The achiever in him has come in handy, showing up for all calls at all hours. Steve is just dandy. If you need something done, Steve is the guy. He can be counted on to help folks, even those who sleep under the sky. Besides his commitment to the fire service, Steve is a husband, grandpa, and father. When he is with his family, hanging at the pool, please don't be a bother. There is also a side of Steve that likes to have fun. Pedal pubs, winter vacations, and some of them on ships. I've seen him at poker smiling while counting his chips. I want to congratulate you, Steve, on a job well done. Your service and dedication is second to none. Stay well and be happy as you begin to change course. Enjoy this new venture. Slow down, have fun, and perhaps get a horse.
Originally, he wanted to be a firefighter, but the aptitude testing was set so high and he failed that the next possible thing at a much lower level he could do was become a police officer. So
Chief Lucas really wanted to be a police officer, but he learned that it was too dangerous for his skill set, so he decided to be a fire chief instead. So we can
Oh, that's wonderful.
That was a great video. And I take it Steve is on the line here. I have to say, this is a really hard thing for me to do because, Steve, you have been here for 43 years. And since my time on the council starting way back in 2014, I always knew that when something came up, that Steve was there and was going to take care of it. And more so during the pandemic as mayor, seeing all of the ways that Steve just jumped in, and I knew that our city was well taken care of. And really, in thinking about you, Steve, you really have been the heart of the department. that I was so moved at how compassionate you were in working through the whole issue that we had with the homeless encampment, and how respectful you were and how creative you were. And what a great problem solver for our city. You sure will be missed. You know, off-duty time for Steve and his wife, I normally run into them over at Menards. They're always doing some kind of project, and I am too. So I generally run into them over at Menards. But Steve, you are really going to be missed. You have done such an amazing job. And I'm here to tell you, since I recently retired myself, last year, that retirement is actually a very good thing, and you will find yourself incredibly busy. So with that, I am going to read the resolution, and then we'll give council members an opportunity to say something as well. So here's the resolution, Steve, and this is much well deserved. Whereas Chief Steve Lucan started his firefighting career in 1977 as a volunteer for the Gladstone Fire Department. I was barely out of high school there. Whereas Chief Lucan rose up the ranks to become chief of the Maplewood Fire Department 3 years after our town's 3 independent companies merged. Whereas Chief Lucan managed several major transitions in the fire EMS department, including the transition of paramedic duties from the police department to fire EMS, implementing the new 800 megahertz radio system for police and fire, working on the transition of 911 dispatch to Ramsey County, overseeing 2 major station consolidations to vastly improve efficiency, and helping establish an all full-time firefighter paramedic emergency medical service for the city of Maplewood. Whereas Chief Lucan is a leader in the field, usually one of the first to a scene, especially in cardiac arrest cases, being honored with several Public Safety Department life-saving awards. Whereas Chief Lucan has served as a mentor, teacher, and leader for scores of young public safety professionals. Whereas Chief Lucan is a lifelong Maplewood resident who has been a business owner in town and continues to be a friend of the community. Now, therefore, it is... Now, therefore, could someone please put on their mute button? Thank you. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved for and on behalf of the city of Maplewood, Minnesota, and its citizens, that the Chief Steve Lucan is being extended our gratitude and appreciation for his professionalism and dedicated service over the past 4 decades. Council members, is there a motion to adopt that resolution for Chief?
I move approval of this resolution of appreciation for Fire Chief Lucan.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson, the motion to adopt the resolution of appreciation for Chief Steve Lucan's service to Maplewood. Discussion. Any further discussion? Council members? Let's go through. Council member Knutson, let's go with you first.
Well, I first met Steve when I was administrator of St. John's. We had way too many false alarms. And the firemen would come in fully geared up, stinking like smoke. And I'd have a sheepish look on my face like, oh no. And Steve would look at me, and he could have given me a bad look, but instead it was a smile. So, and I had a chance to work with him on the EMS task force and have the greatest respect for Steve. I'll miss him a lot. Hopefully I'll see him in the community. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
I just want to thank Steve for the work that he's done for this community. Being his neighbor, I can see his house from my backyard. And so I always appreciate that. And I feel safer in the community knowing he's so close by. So thank you for all your service.
Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
Steve, it was an honor to know you and your wife. It was an honor to work with you all those years, going from volunteer to full-time. I so hope you enjoy your retirement, and I know you're going to enjoy all those grandkids. And I really hope the static when Mayor was reading was not a radio that you brought home.
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Steve, I'm the only one around, I guess, who's been around longer than you have. I don't remember Maplewood Fire, obviously, without you. And it will seem very strange to me, as it will to many in the community, that you're no longer there. But just watching that video, we all know that your spirit lives on with all the things you have done for people in this community, not only your firefighters in the department, but the people you have served. What a remarkable career. It's phenomenal. And I'm so glad that I got to be a part of that in some ways. At first, simply as a resident, and then somebody who went to every fire thing that ever happened, you know, the old days when they used to cook spaghetti and all those things. And certainly as a council member, I have thoroughly enjoyed and been proud to be a leader, an elected leader in this community while you were the head of the fire department. It has been an honor, and we will certainly miss you.
Thank you, council members. Okay, let's take a vote on the motion. Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Steve, I know you're on the call. Would you like to say a few words?
We rendered him speechless.
Mayor and Council, just a quick reminder, Steve, if you'd like to speak, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone.
Steve, are you there?
Mayor and Council, I still show him as being muted.
Maybe we need to send the medics.
Mayor and
Hello?
Council. There he is.
Nope. You get it?
There he
Hello?
is.
Hello.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, everyone. Mayor, Council, City Manager Coleman, Public Safety Director Nadeau, thank you so much for this great evening. It's like everything. I wish I could have been there. We all could have been there in person, but I understand that obviously that can't happen. Just a couple of quick things. One, the video. Obviously, you had to have some help on the inside here to do that, and especially to get some of those old pictures. But anyways, it has been an honor and a privilege to have served the citizens in the city of Maplewood. I've met so many great people here growing up here that I've been able to serve and spend time with. Each of you, it's been wonderful in the past working with all of you. You know, a couple of things really hit the home here is that as I thought about it all and looking at the pictures and everything, my career was more than just me. My career was serving our community. It was working with all the great people we had, not only on the police department, fire department, but, you know, Brian Nagel and Scott and Steve Love, all of those folks up there. It's just been wonderful. And all the things we did together as a city, working together in collaboration. You know, the support that I received from City Manager Coleman and the great support I received from Public Safety Director Nadeau and all of those that I worked for. The other day, well, I should probably preface it with this. First of all, I made probably some bad decisions in my career. Probably the worst one I've ever made was deciding to retire in January with COVID at its max. So the first 3.5 weeks, or actually this is the 4th week, it has not been too exciting. It's been boring where I get up in the morning and I go, so what do I do now type of a deal. But the biggest things I think for all of it was working with so many great people. We had so many great accomplishments, and I can't take credit for those. It was done by so many other people within the fire and police department and the city as a whole. Everyone has been asking me, what is your legacy? What do you want it to be? And, I kept kicking it around, trying to determine what that was. And it finally came to me that my greatest legacy professionally will be that I hired 2 young kids in their mid to late 20s to be assistant fire chiefs. BJ Jungman, who we had here, who became the fire chief in Burnsville, doing an outstanding job. And then, of course, Chief Mondor, who has now taken over. I personally, and in no way would have wanted anyone else to be the next Maplewood fire chief other than Mike. Mike has come so far. He's learned so much, and he's over my head in his skill level that he has and what he can do. And I am so excited, and trust me, it made it a whole lot easier to step aside knowing that Mike was taking over. He will be the next greatest thing that Maplewood Fire Department will ever have. So with that, Mayor, Council, the second part of my legacy, like I mentioned, was my personal one, and that part will be my kids and my grandkids. Couldn't ask for a better legacy than that. So before I choke up here, because this is still tough for me to do, once again, I want to thank everyone very, very much. I want to thank the community for all of their support over the years, our businesses that we have had that have stepped up and been so gracious and how we've all worked together so well. And of course, during this pandemic, things are tough, and we were all going through and learning new things to do. And without the support of the mayor, Melinda Coleman, Chief Nadeau, and actually the whole city council, we wouldn't have had the kind of outcome we had with our encampment if it wasn't for your folks' support and understanding and stepping forward to make that happen. And I will never forget that. And trust me, supporting your staff like you folks do is by far very, very rewarding for us, knowing that the decisions we make will be supported. So again, thank you all so very, very much. It was a great video. It was a great proclamation. And once again, like I told all the firefighters, I love them all. I love all of you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
You are going to be missed. But we know where to find you.
Yes, you do. I'm not planning on moving anytime at all soon.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for putting together that really wonderful video.
That was great.
Kevin and Joe worked really hard on that. You did a great job on that. What a great tribute. So thank you very much. Moving on our agenda, we are going to be doing a presentation from the Nature Center Task Force representatives and City Manager Coleman. I know you're going to introduce this, and then Mike Sable is, I believe, then going to pick up and run with the rest of that.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. I think because we may have some people who are listening or who will listen to this later, because there's an interest from our community on this item, I am going to give a little bit of background here this evening. First of all, this really started with COVID-19, and it really led to shifts in the city's service model for the Nature Center programming and Park and Rec programming. Back in March of last year, all in-person programs and services offered by Park and Rec and the Nature Center were closed due to COVID concerns. And since that time, the city continued to evaluate its response and forecast possible budget impacts in 2020, but also in 2021. As the pandemic continued, the city saw significant revenue loss in direct programming fees in these areas. In early June of last year, the decision was made to close the Nature Center and Park and Recreation programming, which resulted in layoffs of staff in those areas. With increasing uncertainty about the impacts of COVID-19 and when we might return to normal, whatever that is, conditions, the future of these services is unknown. At the June 22nd, 2020 City Council meeting, direction was given to staff to develop 2 task forces made up of residents, stakeholders, and other parties to help develop a new model of service for both the Nature Center and for Park and Recreation in the city of Maplewood. Among the goals of the task force was to review existing programming, services, and operating budgets, review possible programming alternatives, and to identify possible funding partners to help pay for the amenities with a regional focus and or draw. So in July 13th of 2020, the council passed a resolution for the formation of the Nature Center Task Force. And on August 24th, the council appointed residents and stakeholders. And those members were Jim Beardsley, who will be talking to you shortly, Micah Larson, Marge Sagsetter, Martha Wolf, Stacy Yoakum, Simba Blood, Marcy Altman, Melanie Harding, Candace Okeson, and Councilmember Kathy Juneman. Staff support was provided by Audra Robbins and Mike Sable. On September 17th, the Nature Center Task Force held its first meeting, and since then had 7 meetings to complete a report to the City Council with recommendations. Those recommendations include short-term, medium, and long-term implementation timelines and opportunities for moving this forward. Mayor and Council, I'd like Mike Sable to, he's going to be operating the PowerPoint, and he will introduce our speakers this evening on behalf of the Nature Center Task Force. And then Council Liaison Kathleen Juneman would also like to comment on the findings from the task force. This evening, we are looking for a motion recommending that the final report and recommendations of the Nature Center Task Force, and also direct staff to prepare necessary next steps on how we get to implementation. So with that, Mayor, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Sable to start his PowerPoint presentation and introduce our speakers this evening from the task force.
Thank you, City Manager Coleman. Assistant City Manager Sable.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Mike Sable. I had the great privilege and honor of being the host for the task force meetings. As I shared early on with the group, my sole focus and role was to create an environment where their best ideas could come forward. And we really, I think, had a really wonderful team and had a wonderful discussion and debate. And it was a very respectful process where people would throw out ideas. And we set some ground rules that every idea would be respected and honored, and then it would be tweaked, and someone would either add something or modify it. And there was really a striving effort for consensus. One of the things, as the city manager noted, is the task force was originally scheduled to meet 6 times. And one of the elements that we learned early on is that they actually had wanted to see the community survey data to see if that would influence or impact their findings and their recommendations. And so the city council had an opportunity to look at the community survey results at a work session earlier today. And so what I would like to do just very briefly is have Joe Sheeran share the survey results that he shared with the city council with the broader community, because I think part of the information that was included in the survey results helped inform the task force. And then when Joe was complete, what I'd like you to do is invite Jim Beardsley and Martha Wolf to go through their recommendations. And so Joe Sheeran, if you would take it for the next couple of minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Sable, Mayor, Council. I know we went over this earlier in the workshop, but because a new audience might be joining us for the council meeting, we're doing this for the benefit of the public who maybe not had turned into the workshop. So in talking to our folks, we did a community survey. More than 400 people, a representative sample of our community filled out that survey. Overall, we asked a wide range of questions on a wide range of topics. We're going to concentrate tonight on Parks and Recreation and the Nature Center and nature programming for the purposes of the task force discussion. As you can see, overall, members of our community rate our Parks and Recreation system high. There are a lot of opportunities. Obviously, COVID put a damper in that, and now we're going to try to see what's next. One of the things we also looked at is the quality of our facilities, both recreational facilities. We put the why up there because we asked about community centers. The Y is technically our community center. And again, not only was the facility rated high, but the quality of the programming was rated high at the YMCA. One of the things that we also highlighted was the availability of paths and walking trails. I think, again, an outcome of COVID was that we really highlighted from a communication standpoint, from a city council standpoint, from a park and rec programming standpoint, the importance of getting out and walking. The fact that we had, we had that stay-at-home order back last March and April, and we really tried to encourage people to get outdoors in ways to safely, socially distance, and still be able to stay active. So you saw we had about an 11-point jump in this from the 2008 survey to the 2020 survey. Natural environment overall, the quality of our natural environment is rated high. And then the overall preservation of our natural areas and open space and greenbelt areas is highly rated. You can see there it ticked up 7 points because there's a plus or 5 minus margin of error. The survey result folks didn't count anything unless it was at least 10 above or 10 below where it was in 2020. One of the key things in trying to figure out what our park and rec task forces and our nature center task forces, how they should go about creating a sustainable funding model. As we saw, we gave a wide variety of background information on this particular question, explaining how much the city invests, how much it recoups in user fees. And you can see here overwhelmingly, there is a desire for some kind of regional or partnership sharing program, not as much appetite in increasing participant fees. And again, there is some desire to keep the system in place, even knowing that it could somehow raise property taxes. What's abundantly clear is that our community trusts us to run this program or run these programs and not some private entity. So with that, I will turn it over to the Nature Center task force members to continue this slideshow.
Thank you, Mr. Sharon.
Jim Beardsley, if you could unmute yourself, please, and talk through the recommendations on the slideshow, and then also just kind of your general, you were selected with you and Martha were selected as spokespeople for the task force. So I'll turn it over to you, Jim. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Jim Beardsley. I'm the president of the Friends of Maplewood Nature Center and Preserves, member of the task force. I'm going to be concentrating on the physical assets recommendations. Hopefully all you can hear me.
Yes, we can, Mr. Beardsley. Thank you.
Our first recommendation is to open the building spring 2021. And this, of course, is pending COVID guidelines. We really believe this is necessary to make the community understand that the Nature Center is not going away. It's going to be there. It may not be in the same form that it was before, but it's still going to be there. And it is a resource, and it is critical to the success of this whole environmental movement. We want to continue maintaining the trails, grounds, and building. In particular, we're interested in having the front door become ADA compliant. It is not now, and it really should be as we expand, hopefully, the scope of the Nature Center's programming. We've also identified some rental options for things like nature kits, GPS, cross-country skis, snowshoes, those types of things that can be used in any of the areas in the city as long as they were out back. We want to create rental opportunities for small groups, such as birthday parties, anniversary celebrations, retirement celebrations, those types of things. And one of the more interesting was to explore more permanent uses of the building, such as daycare, or at one point someone brought up a coffee shop or things like that. Of course, with all those types of things comes costs, and we are interested in coming up with a way to go through partnerships and that, and Martha Wolf is going to talk about partnerships. So Martha?
Hello, thank you. And partnerships was something that we focused on a lot, and that was validated when we saw those survey results that that was one way that the community was interested in making the nature center sustainable. And so one of the biggest ideas that continued to come up is looking at collaborating with other nature centers, maybe creating an East Metro cooperative similar to the Three Rivers model. Along with that, we had the idea of perhaps a passport system that could be used to generate interest in the nature center and some of the different green space areas. And maybe that's even a way to do some funding, is to have that passport system be something similar to like the state park stickers. Along with that, another option is looking at short-term operations contracts. So something to sort of get us through the short term to get some of our other partnerships set up. Looking at partnerships, there are a lot of partnerships that we wanted to explore. Partnerships that would help provide programming. We considered the Watershed District, Ramsey County Master Gardeners, Minnesota Naturalists. The others that could participate in programming through joint events, the Maplewood Historical Society, Community Ed. It's also had the idea that perhaps those other Maplewood entities, we could share other resources such as registration systems or brochures, maybe even sharing offices. And then looking at community leaders to help us provide access to underserved communities, so partnering with like the police department and fire department. And then also looking at community outreach partners to maybe explore something similar to the Albert Lee Blue Zone model. And then schools is another partnership area, with environmental education being one of the main goals that we felt was important for the Nature Center to provide. So looking at possibly homeschool groups, working with ECFE and other school district groups to see how we can collaborate with them in providing programming, maybe looking at virtual options or ways that we can provide programming at the schools to reduce their field trip costs, and even looking at higher education collaboration with the Nature Center being a resource for students and instructors, or maybe even as a volunteer base for students in their degree programs needing to gain some hours towards their degree. And then our final partnership recommendation was looking at a city-sponsored task force or committee that would help explore these cooperative efforts and kind of move that piece forward. And so, as I said, with environmental education being one of the main goals that we felt was important to the Nature Center, we thought starting narrow with a few things that we were good at, successful programs from the past, things like the native plants programs or the rain gardens, and really get those up and running again, and then add in more programming. And we really thought it was important to be expansive for family programming and making sure that there's ways for everybody to access that programming. And then related to funding pieces, looking at the possibility of establishing a nonprofit that could help run the Nature Center, annual fundraising event that, and along with that, sustainer donation programs. So looking at ways that would help provide long-term sustainability. Grant opportunities could help with some of that or help get some things started. We also mentioned that because leaving the model the same came up almost equally high in the survey as partnerships, that perhaps looking at a mixed model of the partnerships and some tax revenue would be appropriate. And then with volunteer opportunities, expanding those opportunities to help with operations, we felt strongly that there was the need for a volunteer coordinator and thought it would be great if that was aligned with other partners or peer cities. So if we were doing like an East Metro collaborative model, that volunteer coordinator could perhaps work with all of those areas, and that lead volunteers would be helpful in perhaps saving costs, that those lead volunteers could then be on site helping manage our other volunteers, because we felt it was important to have on-site leadership when volunteers were there. And then our final volunteer recommendation, again, is to have volunteers for an action-oriented task force to help investigate and follow through recommendations. We had a lot of passionate individuals as part of our task force that are interested in perhaps continuing the work to make some of these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Madam Mayor, this is Mike Sable. May I add a few items?
Yes, please.
Jim and Martha spoke on behalf of the entire task force and did a really wonderful job. I think the staff report included the recommendations, and when you have a situation like you have with the Nature Center with an abrupt closure and a rabid fan base of the service and amenity, there was no shortage of good ideas. And what we really tried to do was to put a little bit of structure around sort of the recommendations. And so that's why you'll see there were sort of 6 broad categories. And within there, I think probably at one point we might have had 30 to 40 bullet points under each. And we just kept refining it. And the group was, edited down and refined. And it was really, I think, important for the group to do that. We tried to put things into categories of short-term, medium, and long-term. And I do want to note that the short-term says 6 months, and I would say that a more reasonable time frame might be a year, because there just is so much work within that first year. But I do want to say that the task force as a whole would like to continue to do the work. This is a big important amenity, and so there was a willingness to continue putting in effort. And it doesn't have to be necessarily this task force going forward, but I think there is an excitement and enthusiasm for members to continue the work. For example, one of the sessions we held was we invited other nature centers to come and present how they operate their business model. And one of them was Ramsey County. We also did a deep dive into the Dodge Nature Center, which is a very large, robust nonprofit. And so we explored these models. And if we're going to have conversations with them, why not potentially have task force members as part of those partnership conversations? And there was a willingness to continue the dialogue. So while we have sort of reached a point where the recommendations are here, I think I can say safely that there's an appetite for continued effort, and I know that staff would welcome that, because they were a wonderful group to work with and have a passion and a commitment to the work. And so if the City Council is interested in doing more pursuit of ideas and opportunities, we have a volunteer base ready to do that work with us.
Great report. Thank you, Mr. Sable. I want to thank all of the members of the task force. This was a rather surprising turn of events. And really, by using a task force, it really brought forward a number of different opportunities that we could turn, what happened with the pandemic and the closing of the Nature Center on this temporary basis into an opportunity to figure out how we can make that sustainable and what we can do into the future. So the task force members, thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your creativity. I appreciate certainly the work that you did. What I'd like to do is open this up for council discussion so that we can focus on first the task force report, and then we'll move on to the Parks and Rec report. But council member, let's start a round robin. Council member Knutson, discussion, questions that you have?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a lot of questions. I just, I know when the problem arose and we were looking at a lot of feedback, it was very apparent that this is a regional center. And when I look at all the hard work they did, I think the idea and the ultimate resolution is going to be in a regional solution. So I really appreciate what everybody's done. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I had the opportunity to read these recommendations before the end of the year when I was at the Parks and Recs Commission, and I was impressed with the short and medium and long-term goals that they all came up with as a group. And I agree that I think we need to look at it as more of a regional approach. And I'm excited to be able to help in any way that I can to forward those goals.
Do you have any questions for either Martha or Jim?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
Yes, I want to thank everyone on that task force. I think it's wonderful. It shows what a great passion people have, and it excites me when I see how much passion is behind this, and the fact that the task force not only wanted to be instrumental in starting this, but wants to stay with this group. I think that's just phenomenal, and I applaud them for that and their effort. And I think their ideas are wonderful. I can't wait to see what else is going to come out of this. And any help that I can provide to this task force, I am here for you.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman, you were part of this.
Yes, I was. If you think you hear passion and excitement tonight, you should have been in on those meetings. This group really had, the whole idea was, what can we do to keep this asset going, and what can we do so that we're sharing it with all the families in Maplewood and beyond. And so I too appreciate all the work they've done up to this point, but more than that, I appreciate their enthusiasm for wanting to move forward and be part of a group that helps with the implementation of whatever the council decides we should do first. I mean, it was abundantly clear at these meetings that they didn't want that building not to be there and not to be appreciated, but it's way beyond that. It's all the environmental education that comes out from that, as well as the trails and the whole situation of where the building is. And so I sincerely hope that we are smart enough to let them be the people who help us to implement these things along the way, and then to reprioritize as we go, because they have some really good thoughts on the prioritization, and they have a practical side for the most part that says, okay, we know this costs money and this costs money, but they're also looking at ways to raise money. And I really do appreciate they came up early on with the whole idea of the regional value, and like the idea of a passport program to interact with other local parks and so on, so that it would be a regional asset to everyone, including any participants in that kind of a program. So this is just the beginning as I see it. And I really do want us to take advantage of their enthusiasm and their knowledge base in helping us move some of it forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Juniman. I echo your comments about this is just the beginning, because, and I noticed that in our motion, we're being asked to accept the final report and direct staff to prepare necessary next steps regarding implementation, because it's taking these ideas after we have, the task force has studied them and then put this together with kind of the framework of what our future might look like. Now we get to the actual tangible next steps. What do we need to do to protect and preserve and make sure that this is a sustainable asset for our community into the future? So
and I think, Mayor, I think that what it's probably going to take, at least from having sat with these people, and I know we're going to hear from another one now, we may need a work session where the council just discusses what's in front of us and how we see it the most reasonable way to start moving forward, and then pull these people back into service. I mean, I kind of think we need to have a discussion at some point. Just my thought.
I think that that is an excellent idea. And what I'd like to do is have staff work on what do the next steps look like? And then bring that to the council. And certainly we could do that at a workshop to talk through this. But I'd like to see the recommendation from staff on next steps, because we need to be able, it's one thing to have a task force. We need to actually use the information that we've received and actually apply it and implement it.
Yes.
So taking that next step forward, is there a motion to accept the final report and direct staff to prepare the next steps?
I move that, of course.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. The motion to accept the final report and recommendation of the Nature Center Task Force and direct staff to prepare necessary next steps regarding implementation. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye, and I have to interject. Mr. Sable is a fantastic facilitator. That's how we got here.
He is.
Thank you. And I vote aye as well. The motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is that Councilmember Knutson?
Nope.
It was me.
Oh.
I said, thank you, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You kind of cut out there. All right. Moving on, we have a presentation from Parks and Rec concerning the programming task force recommendations. City Manager Coleman, did you want to tee up this with background as well?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm just moving on to that page of the reports here. It's very similar in nature to our first one in terms of why we had to make the shift to talk about the cuts in Park and Recreation. Same time frame. The only difference here is that you did pass a specific resolution for the formation of a Park and Recreation Task Force in July. And in August 24th of last year, the City Council appointed residents and stakeholders to the two task force groups. Members of the Park and Rec Task Force included Aaron Wolf, Val Vang, Michael Erickson, Angela Hugger, Beth Watrid, Vicki Leher, Nolan Carnell, Bryce Sheeran, Scott Martinson, Dorothy Molstead, Nick Kramer, Bart Murphy, and council member liaison is Bill Knutson. Staff included Audra Robinson, Neil Brenneman, and Mike Sable. And on September 17th, the Park and Rec Task Force held their first meeting, and they've met 7 times in addition to the first meeting. And you have a copy of the completed report for the City Council recommendations. And these two contain short, medium, and long-range implementation timelines. And it also asks that you have Mike Sable go through the PowerPoint presentation with his assistants from the task force. And I'll let Mike introduce those members as they are called up to speak. And also Councilmember Knutson, I'm sure, would have some comments that he would like to add at some point. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager Coleman. Mr. Sable.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We will not do a second review of the community survey data because it did help inform both the Nature Center and the Parks and Recreation Task Force. Again, this task force was made up with slightly different membership because the city of Maplewood has such an important relationship with athletic associations, with community education, with school districts, with neighboring cities. The service area for a youth who's interested in dance or is interested in athletics really doesn't know boundaries. And so the concept of drawing in folks from around the region was really important. And so we had associations from Oakdale, from Northeast United Soccer, which serves many communities in the East Metro. We had staff from Little Canada. We had basketball folks from South St. Paul. It really did cover a very wide variety of sports, of interests, of geography. This one had a slightly different flavor, but again, with the really good, robust kind of conversation. And I really want to give credit to Audra Robbins and Neil Brenneman. They really helped frame up some fairly complicated, issues. And you might have 10 different types of customers who would do programming. And so getting an understanding of that, I think, was really important. And so kudos to them for really clearly articulating and framing up some of the challenges was really helpful for the group. Again, I played host and facilitator. And so tonight we have Dorothy Molstead, who was the representative from the Recreation and Parks Commission, is going to lead off. Vicki Lee Herr is going to take on, and I guess I'll make a sports metaphor, but she will bat second. Beth Watchard will bat third, and Mike Erickson will do cleanup. This was a group that was, again, highly engaged, lots of folks in and out asking really important, thoughtful questions. And so, Dorothy, I already see that you're unmuted. You are welcome to kick us off, please.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mike. I have to confess I was a little leery about this task force process, especially doing it on Zoom. Mike kept us organized, kept us on task, while still giving everyone a voice, every idea the chance to be explored. I admit we didn't come up with all of the solutions, but I think we have a document that can lead the way to a new future. You will be reviewing some of those points, but not all of them. One of the things I think for Park and Rec Task Force that we kept in front of us was the vision that the commission had developed a couple of years ago. And I want to read that to you. The vision is to help create a vibrant community that embraces diversity, celebrates arts and cultures, values health and wellness, and promotes stewardship of the environment. Going along with that is our mission statement to provide diverse recreational opportunities for people of all ages and abilities to enhance and preserve our parks, facilities, and open space while promoting environmental stewardship through education and outreach. There's some key words in there. I think education is one of them. The environmental. Park and Rec has got such a diversity of programs that reach so many people in so many different ways that we had some pretty interesting discussions. Mike has put up a slide on values and philosophies. I will confess, as a former teacher and as a student who sat in a lot of classrooms, I really get frustrated when you hand me a piece of paper with the information, then you put up a slide with the information, then you want somebody to read it. So I'm not going to do that. I would point out that we talked about our values and seeing how they will coincide with our partners. We took a look at the police department MAC initiatives on how that might help us reach out to more diverse communities. And we had a lot of discussion about what parks and the programs there mean to us and to our families. You did review the survey, which we were pleased to see the kinds of results that we got. And it tells us that parks and rec programs are a very important part of what makes Maplewood a good place to live. We have an excellent park and open space system and excellent recreation programs. My hope is that the task force is that these essential parts of our city experience continue. The bottom line, we need and value our parks and our programs. It is our hope that they are only on pause and will soon be given the means and opportunity to return. That's all I got to say.
All right, I'll take over. Thanks, Dorothy. I'll
Thank
be
you.
talking about our recommendations around Maplewood's physical assets, such as rinks, buildings, courts, and fields. Essentially, we want to be sure that we are taking care of these assets by physically inspecting them on an ongoing basis so we can preserve them and be able to continue offering these valuable resources to the community. We think it would be helpful to evaluate the usage of these assets. So for example, how are the gyms being used at the school district and the why? What types of groups are using these gyms? What are these groups using the gyms for? With information like this, we'd like to recommend developing an inventory map and identification of potential users with the goal of making marketing these assets and creating opportunities for parks and recs, such as rentals.
My name is Beth Watchrood. I will continue with the programming. We found we would like to examine the demographics from young, middle, and older community members. We want to figure out what the needs and excitement levels are for sports as well as activities. We would like to review joint power agreements, evaluate the YMCA partnership, identify potential future partners, and explore information sharing with the other cities around us. In the medium term, look at how to maintain and expand school partnerships. Should I continue on with the business models?
Yes, please, Beth, go ahead.
Okay. We want to look at a stronger advocacy. It's not just a park, it's a community. I live in Little Canada right now, and I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. We definitely enjoy all of our surrounding communities' parks and recreation programs. I feel it is so important for family. We want to plan for the more demand with the weather and hopefully the easing of COVID. And we want to figure out which partners are best at delivering all the activities. Continue to look at the peer cities to see what they're doing well, and then stay in touch with the current employee pool, like the umpires and refs and volunteers. And then with regional cooperatives, identify an affinity group partners, identify and share programming with other communities, and then look into if software and systems and documents can be shared between nearby towns and communities.
Okay, hi everybody, Mike Erickson. I'm going to take the final one with financing. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good.
Hi, Mike.
Hi everybody. I'm going to start out with having been a member of the Maplewood Community Center for 22 years. We see the operation, we see the YMCA, and we want to make sure that we best understand their financial position and long-term. And with a deep dive into that, we could potentially charge more to offer a higher level of service, evaluating pricing, which we're going to talk about, more sponsorships and grant opportunities, and providing some level of funding to maintain the level of services. We need to identify other sources of money. Healthcare donations, Align is one example. We want to look at joint marketing efforts for special events, certainly potentially kicking off with our city festival on July 4th. And then, as we did that many years ago, would this be something that we would put out to the public in terms of some public referendum for public and open spaces? We did way back when. We were the first city in the state of Minnesota to put out a bond referendum. If we need to look at it, and this also comes after 22 years of coaching my 3 kids through the system. Parks and Rec is an incredible value to the community. And we need to make sure that the public understands that and understands that these were tough decisions the 5 of you had to make. And we appreciated that. But at the end of the day, as we deal with COVID and come out of COVID, we need to get these activities and programming and planning for our children and adults back to what they were before. So thank you all very much Great job, Mike, Sable, Audra, and Neil as well.
Mayor, this is Mike Sable. May I add a few comments?
Yes, please.
I think the task force did really important work. And I think one of the things that I'd like to emphasize is there are really when we started, there were 4 key areas of service level. There are youth programs, which are non-sport related programs, whether it be dance or whether it be other kinds of activities for kids. And then there's youth sports. And then the same applies to adults. There's adult programming, and then there's adult sports. And, throughout the conversation, they also identified that there is sort of a 5th category of virtual events and virtual engagement. And what this really does, these sort of 5 areas, really gives us the opportunity to pick and choose who is the best partner in each area. And I'll just say, for instance, adult programming might live best in community education, and that our work would really be to support the work that they're providing. However, there might be something that we are really good at, and we would ask other partners to then promote to us. And so there really was this momentum that you could feel building in the task force around helping each other group be their very best. And so focus on what you do really well, and then support others in the things that they do really well. And that there was a spirit of camaraderie that sort of emerged really early on that, and I don't work in recreation, but I can tell you that I found it to be made sense logically that would be the model that could be potentially helpful long-term. And then I think the other thing that I hadn't anticipated that I think gives some excitement is there really is going to be a pent-up demand for these kinds of services. I don't know when that will be, but a vaccine will arrive, it will be distributed, and there will be a return to a quote-unquote normal. And I think there's going to be a hunger to be active in small groups and large groups, whether it's children or adults or continued virtually. So there is an opportunity, I think, here to capitalize on the strengths of others. And it was an exciting, as somebody who doesn't work in it, I got the energy from the group, and I've kind of adopted it as my own. So that's just one thing I wanted to offer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sable, and thank you for your help in facilitating the task force. I also want to thank the task force members. Putting in a lot of time, meeting 7 times on Zoom. We really do appreciate your insights and your thoughtfulness and your dedication to help us figure out how we can do Parks and Rec programming into the future. So thank you for your dedication and your time. It is so very much appreciated. So council members, let's see if we have some questions. Councilmember Knutson.
Yes, I was on liaison to that task force, and the work was very impressive and very thorough. Mike helped drawing, kind of charts and graphs specifying youth and youth sports and adult. What struck me during the whole thing is it's kind of like I want to think about the responsibility that Maplewood has maintaining its parks and offering places for families and others, to recreate. So when I looked at that responsibility, certainly it's to the environment, it's to education, it's to the overall community, and then there's a real stewardship kind of opportunity. So what I think, our responsibility as a community is we need to have easy access. A family needs to be able to walk on these parks, look at the apparatus, a swing or whatever it is, and find it usable and friendly. And Audra does an excellent job at looking at our parks and looking at it from a point of view that you don't need a supervisor to get a family engaged in our parks. There's walk-on opportunities, and I think that's important for us to recognize that we have a responsibility through our tax base to provide perhaps youth programs and provide parks that are easily accessible. Then it struck me that there's a whole business side to this. And Mike and Dorothy and others that were probably more involved in athletics and and the operation of aesthetics than I would ever dreamed of, as Mike said. Just have this incredible network and opportunity. So again, I'm looking at it from my council member point of view, is what responsibility do we have ultimately to maintain those parks? And then what can we encourage the entrepreneurs and the other really invested businesses in making this thing work collectively? So again, what I like is what was suggested by Councilmember Juniman, is to have a workshop on this, because I want to stress and recognize what Maplewood's city responsibility is, and then look at what opportunities there are to enhance that, like we do with the community center. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Yes, my comments would be similar to before. I appreciate all the work that the task forces have done on this. Thank you guys all for the work that you did on this. And I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
Yes, once again, I concur. I think the task force did a great job. I think this pause has caused us to do some really great things that we can look at partnerships. I think that's a really big thing going out there. Once a lot of the restrictions are lifted with COVID, we are going to have a lot of people wanting to do a lot of things outdoors and programming. And I think getting with joint power agreements and getting all this figured out now and working with our neighbors, because it's not just Maplewood that is going through this, it's everywhere. And I think if we can work on partnerships, and I agree with, Bill, get a workshop going so we can talk about this and get some things starting to solidify. I think that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Councilmember Cave. Councilmember Juniman.
What they said. I think this group did a really good job, and I just reading through some of the cooperative ideas, and I really do think that, as my two colleagues have said, we need to really look quickly and thoroughly into what we can do as a coalition of neighbors, cities that can do the same things. And I mean, I'm so freaking old. I've been doing this for so long. 2004 is the first time I brought this up to a city council. My goodness, some things take a while. Where we just say, okay, we're good at this, we'll do that program. You're good at that, you do that program. I don't think it's that complicated if you go about it right. And I do think that one of the things mentioned in the recommendations is publishing joint publications, and so people know what goes on in the other cities and vice versa, so that it brings everybody to a point where they can make decisions on what's going on, and everybody will gain. Every city will gain by having everybody know what's available there. So I really think that needs to be pursued in a big way. Everybody knows that the values of parks are not really measurable, but it's in everybody's faces. I mean, they go to the park to have fun. They go to the park to play on the equipment. They go to the park to play ball. And I'm with Bill. We need to make sure that we are making these places safe and available. That's our first big task, I think. And programs will sort of build themselves if we cooperate and collaborate with our neighbors. I really think that's the key in this one.
I agree.
And and then we need to thank, again, I failed to mention it with the other one, Audra sat through both of these task forces. She is fantastic. What she keeps in her head makes me tired to think about it. But she did a very good job with ours, and I'm sure she did the same with the Parks and Rec. She's a good listener, but she's also a good participant. So we thank her well.
Thank you for those comments. I concur with my fellow council members, and I want to thank Audra and Neil, and I think I've already thanked Mike Sable. I want to thank our two council members too, who sat in on these task forces, Councilmember Knudsen and Councilmember Juniman, because really, you've made some very good points tonight, fellow council members, that this really goes to the quality of life that we have here in Maplewood, and, trying to find, Councilmember Juniman, what you said about you can't really put a ticket price on it, but it is quantifiable when you start looking at the quality of life that we have. And what I really admire about Maplewood and our staff, this is really an example of when you get lemons, you make lemonade. You know, we had a pandemic hit us, and we're using this as an opportunity to really enhance what we are offering in terms of Parks and Rec and in our nature center, and taking this time and turning this into an opportunity is really something that shows, I think, very strongly the resiliency of our city and of our staff and of our leadership too here in Maplewood. So thank you everyone for this discussion. Council members, we have a motion in front of us. It is similar to the Nature Center motion to approve the final report and recommendations of the Parks and Rec Programming Task Force and to direct staff to prepare necessary next steps regarding implementation. Will someone make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Juniman, and I couldn't tell.
Oh, come on. Oh,
It's had to be, that was Cave, way faster than Billy. You just couldn't hear me.
Second by Cave.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right, I'll sit this one out.
It's hard to talk to hear when you're talking over each other. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's move to a vote. Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. Thank you, task force members. Thank you for this very helpful presentation.
Very well.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items. I would like to highlight number 4 on the consent agenda.
I would like to highlight number 3.
So number 3 and 4, before we get to any motions about it, council, or let's see, number 3 is the donation from Schmelz. Chief Nadeau, that is yours. Do you want to give us a little background on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. For quite a few years, certainly as long as I've been here, Schmelz Countryside has made extremely generous donations to Maplewood's public safety, both with police and fire. And this year, similar to years past, they gave $1,000 for equipment or other training needs within the police department, and they did the same for the fire department. So we met with our staffs, and we talked about where we had some needs. In the police department, we are in the process of coming up with a partially grant-funded upgrade to some of our technology, which will be particularly helpful during COVID and allow us to do some distance learning. So we're excited about that. We'll be applying the $1,000 to that. And in the fire department, they're looking at a potential upgrade to some fitness equipment for their South Fire Station. And so we've already authored a thank you letter to Schmelz. Again, just incredibly supportive and generous business within our city. We've also offered them the opportunity to come into the police department once the upgrade is done, and it's safe to do so, to actually see what their money was spent on and all of the ways that we're able to utilize that. So again, we're incredibly grateful for their continuing generosity, and we're asking the council to approve the acceptance of the gift so that we can be used for those purposes.
Thank you, Chief. And they've been doing it a long time because they've been doing it almost as long as I've been here.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, Schmelz. Number 4 is the Joint Powers Agreement in Ramsey County to add a social worker to the mental health outreach team. Chief Mondor, that is yours. Can you speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the council. Over the past 2 years, Maplewood Public Safety has seen a surge in mental health crisis in the community. In 2019, the department created the Mental Health Outreach Team, or MHOT team, with the goal to help those suffering from mental illness and falling through healthcare gaps in the community. This partnership is unique as it's one of the few, if any, that exist in the country that involve fire department, community paramedics, and police department personnel. Mental health related calls for service are a true public safety emergency, and we are working side by side as a public safety team to help those in our community that are having difficulties getting access to the care that they need. This program has been going on since 2019. There was some slight disruption at the beginning of the pandemic, but we continue to see mental health related incidents on the rise in the community. Unfortunately, it is a small team, and the rest of the work that we do as police officers, firefighters, and paramedics does not go away. And a lot of the work that we found ended up resulting in case management, which we weren't positioned well to do. And so with the support of Mayor Abrams and relentless support of Mayor Abrams, continuing to bring this to the forefront, we've pursued partnerships. Mayor Abrams got Ramsey County commissioners and Ramsey County social services staff together with Maplewood public safety staff. And Sergeant Mike Duga has been instrumental in this program from the beginning. He's also on the call, and I'll let him add anything that he sees fit. But after nearly a year's worth of working and meeting with the county, what we have before you is a joint powers agreement and some other data sharing agreements, a business associates agreement, and a qualified service organization agreement that have been reviewed by Kennedy and Graven and approved. That if approved, we will send this back to Ramsey County, and they'll put in a request for board action to add a social worker that would be embedded in the mental health outreach team, which would be a much needed lift of support for our team so that they can focus on reaching more people in need in our community while passing off those that have more chronic needs and more detailed case management to the social worker who can help them navigate what's really a complex healthcare system when we talk about mental health related illness. As I said, I would just like to highlight one thing. Obviously COVID-19 and the civil unrest that we've experienced in 2020 have challenged public safety entities throughout the nation to think about how they do business. But in Maplewood, I'm proud of the fact that we've been having these conversations for over 2 years. And because of our preparation and because of the support of senior management and elected officials, we're positioned to implement this in the next couple of months. And so without any other additions, I'd pass that off to Sergeant Dugas in case you had anything else to add, Sergeant Dugas.
Sergeant Dugas.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank Mayor Abrams for her continued support throughout this process, as well as Chief Nadeau. In addition to giving us increased case management capability and being able to reach more people, this will also give us the ability to have a co-responder model when our social worker is embedded with us. I know that's a huge priority for many members of the community that we have spoken with, and we are very excited to meet that need with this new position.
Thank you very much. And, I am really excited about this and what this is going to be able to do for our community and for our public safety officers. This is just really an amazing thing. So I am so happy about it. And I want to thank Chief Mondor and Sergeant Dugas for all of their hard work, because without their vision for this MHOT team, we wouldn't be here talking about getting a social worker from Ramsey County. So thank you very much. And thank you for that highlight. So with that, council members, is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I move consent agenda items G1 through 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the consent agenda, items G1 through 4. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes.
Mayor?
Councilmember
Mayor,
Junior.
excuse me. Just one addition. If you want to be even more enthused about this program, I don't know if you met her, but whoever brought the young lady who brought my packet on Wednesday night, who was a CSO and about to become an officer, is a licensed social worker and has worked in the field for several years. Can you stand it? I mean, could we get any better than we are? Probably not. But I just think it just shows the vision that everybody has and that people get bored and make things happen. And I just thought that was a happy thought to know. So I thought I'd share it.
Thank you very much. We have no public hearings tonight. Moving on to unfinished business. Finance Director Paul Seth, this is your agenda item concerning the resolution awarding the sale of GOCIP bonds that occurred today. And I just remind my council members that there was an updated revised sale day report and revised resolution that was sent to us today based on the bond call today. So Ms. Paulseth.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Wonderful. I know it's late, so we're going to move right along. As it turns out, today is a great day to build a fire station. As you recall, December 14th, the City Council authorized the city staff to request bids for the sale of capital improvement bonds to finance the North Fire Station. So the amount of the bids or the amount of the sale was proposed to be $9,500,000, and the remainder of the $13.1 million fire station was going to be financed with $2.1 million in existing funds in the capital project fund and a $1.5 million interfund loan from the general fund. That interfund loan will be paid back when the surplus properties, surplus stations, at such time as they would sell, and the proceeds would be received from that. As you know, that is somewhat in process right now, but is not expected to be completed in time to start the construction of the fire station. So with that, our municipal advisor, Ellers, has facilitated the sale. And you did, as Mayor Abrams pointed out, you received a sale day report, which is typically passed out the night of the council meeting because the sale took place at 11 a.m. But Mr. Kimmel from Ellers was able to pull together the information, and we did email that out later in the day this afternoon. So with that, I will turn this over to Mr. Kimmel, and after his presentation, he will tell you what happened in the sale, and then you will be considering the resolution to award the sale of the GO capital improvement bonds for the financing of the North Fire Station. So with that, Madam Mayor, I would like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Kimmel.
Mr. Kimmel, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Bruce Kimmel with Ellers, and I'm really pleased to be with you tonight to present the results of the city's bond sale. As Ms. Paulseth mentioned, it was a great day to sell bonds, and I'd like to just share a few highlights with you. Referring to the sale day report, let's go right to the third page that's titled Bid Tabulation. As you can see from these 2 pages, we received 6 bids on the city's behalf at 11 o'clock this morning. And the first place bid was a syndicate led by R.W. Baird out of Milwaukee with a true interest rate of 1.26%. That is a fixed rate for the next 20 years. And I can tell you that is by far the lowest interest rate I've ever seen with any of my clients. It's really quite exceptional. We keep on thinking we've reached the low point in terms of interest rates, and rates will just keep going a little bit lower, and eventually they have to turn around, but this has certainly been to the city's advantage in financing such a large portion of your fire station project. What's also really remarkable about this interest rate, besides the fact that it was lower than our pre-sale estimate, is that there were two other bidders of the 6 that were right on the heels of Baird. If you look at the next page, you can see that the second place bid, which was Northland Securities, came in less than 0.01% higher than Baird, so 1 basis point. And then the third place bid, FHN Financial out of Memphis, was just another basis point behind Northland. So you had these 3 underwriting firms that were competing very, very aggressively to buy the city's bonds. And even the last place bid from BOK at 1.51% was still considerably better than our pre-sale estimate that we presented to you back in December. Granted, we always try to have a little bit of a cushion in our pre-sale estimates to avoid unpleasant surprises on the sale date. But even with that, all 6 of these bids were very, very strong bids. And of course, the leading bids were quite exceptional. I wanted to draw your attention back to the Baird bid because we've discussed this phenomenon of premium pricing before, but this bid from Baird really brings that out. You can see that the interest rates starting at 3% and then dropping down to 2 and 1% and then going back up to 1.6%. Those are the coupons that the city will actually be paying on over the next 20 years to the investors that hold these bonds. But the true yields on the bonds, in other words, the actual earnings to the investors based on the dollar amounts that were paid for each of these bonds, are much, much lower. And it's the yields that we really pay attention to. So Baird basically offered the city about $500,000 more to buy this $9.5 million bond issue. And the $500,000 premium is reflected in the fact that the actual yields are so much lower. So the true cost to the city, you can see, ranges from 0.22% to only 1.6% 21 years from now. And the average works out to be about that 1.26% that I mentioned earlier. Moving on to the sources and uses of funds, these are the final debt service schedules that Ms. Paulseth and her team will use to pay the debt service on the bonds going forward. And you can see again, we kept the $9.5 million amount that was authorized by the City Council back in December. But you can see then again, the reoffering premium of about $491,000 on top of that. What that means is that even net of cost of issuance and underwriter's discount, this bond issue will generate about $9.85 million of proceeds towards the project. What that means is that you'll then need less in terms of other funding sources, including the interfund loan, to complete the roughly $13 million project, which is a great outcome for the city, especially at this very low interest rate. I also just wanted to note very quickly the debt service schedule. I won't go into this in a lot of detail, but these are, again, the fixed principal and interest payments that you will be making over the next 20-some years. And what's really key here is to point out that you will have the ability at the city's sole discretion to either prepay or refinance the bonds at any point after February of 2030. So that's really just 9 years from now. And if you look at the principal that's maturing on the bonds after 2030, that's about 2/3 of the principal that is going to be eligible to be refinanced at lower interest rates, should market conditions allow for that 10 years from now or 9 years from now, or to prepay or do something else at the city's discretion. So you've got the benefit of knowing your payments for the next 20 years, but you've got some ability to readjust as city finances dictate in the future. And finally, Madam Mayor and council members, I wanted to just note the city's credit rating. We went through a really excellent credit rating discussion with S&P as part of this bond issuance process. Ms. Paulseth and Mr. Rube and their team do a really phenomenal job, along with other members of city leadership, in preparing for these rating presentations. And as a result, the conversations go very, very smoothly, and the analysts always compliment me on how well prepared the city is and how smoothly the rating process goes as a result of that. So S&P did affirm the city's AA+ rating really with flying colors. There were no credit concerns. Really everything that the city is doing to control its own destiny, if you will, in terms of its credit rating. The city is doing with financial management and very strong reserves, strong budgetary performance. You can see all of these descriptors yourself. And even the so-called weak debt profile, you may recall that the descriptors that S&P uses are dictated by their methodology. But S&P is well aware of the city's plans to gradually moderate its debt burden and appreciates also how rapidly you're amortizing your existing debt. So even though you may have noticed the fact that your debt burden is considered, quote, weak, really that's not a credit drawback and represents a very small part of the credit characteristics of the city in comparison to everything else that is strong and very strong. So really, again, they were very complimentary to the city staff and city leadership in terms of doing what you need to do to keep your credit rating at that AA+ level, and it went very, very smoothly. So with that, why don't I stop and ask if you have any questions about the credit rating or the bond issue sale results, or what that'll mean for the city's debt service going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmel, and thank you, Ms. Paulseth. You know, I loved the start of this. It's a great day to build a fire station. And, you know, when I got the report late this afternoon, I was amazed. It truly was a great day to build a fire station. Much better than what was projected in December. And really, you know, your staff, Mr. Kimmel and Ms. Paulseth, they did a fabulous job. You folks did a fabulous job. So with that, let's see if there are any questions from the council. Councilmember Knudsen.
I don't have any questions. I went right to the rating report and read it thoroughly, and it's a good read. So well done. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
No questions at this time.
Councilmember Cave.
No questions.
Councilmember Juniman.
No questions. Great job.
So, council members, we have a motion before us. Is there someone who wants to make that motion?
Well, I'll speak at once.
Then I will make the motion to approve the resolution awarding the sale of general obligation capital improvement bonds series 2021A, in the original aggregate principal amount of $9,500,000, fixing their form and specifications, directing their execution and delivery, and providing for their payment. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman. The motion to approve the resolution concerning the sale of bonds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye. We're going to have a fire station. Yes.
And I vote aye as well. Congratulations. We are going to have a new fire station. That is exciting news. Moving on to new business, Mr. Thompson, we're going to be talking about St. John's Hospital and the new heart cath lab.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me, and is my screen sharing?
Yes, we can. We can hear you and we can see your screen.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight is a development application that we have received from mHealth Fairview for an expansion to St. John's Hospital in Maplewood. There are two applications being requested by the applicant, and the first is an amendment to the existing conditional use permit for operation of a hospital on the site, and the second is a design review for the building expansion. The expansion would be located on the southwest corner of the building, so along the Beam Avenue frontage of the hospital. It would be a 21,000 square foot addition. And what's fairly unique about the addition is that it would actually be entirely built over the existing building. The structure of the building was designed to support future expansion in this location. It would be actually up on the 3rd floor above the existing 2-story portion of the hospital building. The addition would be adjacent to the surgery center, and it would provide for additional cardiac catheterization facilities at the hospital. And as a vertical expansion, fairly minor to no impacts to the site itself. There would be no footprint change to the building, so there's no impacts on impervious surface, green space, grading, and those associated things. The rendering on the right-hand side of your screen just shows the building addition. The stone and kind of brown brick are the existing portions of the building, and the other kind of brownish color up on top is actually the building expansion. It's an additional 1-story building. The exterior building materials are a metal panel, which is designed specifically not to replicate or match the building, but rather to complement the architecture of the hospital. We did send, as we do with all development applications, a notice to all the property owners and residents within the area. We did not receive any public comments. We didn't have any concerns or comments from our planning or engineering review of the project. It was reviewed both by the Planning Commission as well as by the Community Design Review Board, both of which recommended approval of the application with those conditions that are outlined in your report. So with that, we are recommending approval of both of the applications and recommend the council adopt the 2 resolutions as outlined in your report. And then, Mayor, I do know we have representatives, if there are questions, as well from M Health Fairview, as well as the architect, Leo A. Daly, on the call tonight. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, and thank you for the report. Councilmember Knudsen, let's go do our round robin and see if there are any questions for either Mr. Thompson. Well, let me back up one moment. Let's find out if anyone from Fairview or the architect would like to add anything to Mr. Thompson's presentation. And then we will go to questions from the council.
Mayor and Council, we have 2 individuals that I show, Danielle and Derek, that I've allowed to unmute themselves. Danielle and Derek, if you would like to speak, if you could please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is Derek Shadva, project architect for Leo A. Daly. I don't have anything to add at this time unless there's any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you and welcome to the council meeting. Then let's go to see if there are any questions from the council. Councilmember Knudsen. Councilmember Knudsen.
Oh, just a quick background. When I was CEO, we designed that building to go up 3 stories, and ultimately now with the code, it only can go 2. But one of the project designers said we should move our ER to the back of the campus, which I refused to do, and instead, made provision for that building to go up. So it's fun to see after 20 some years or so that what we planned is actually going to work. And bringing cardiology to St. John's is a big deal. And, as part of the EDA, I'll be looking at what else St. John's can do relative to cardiology and other specialty programs. So I think it's a big deal for St. John's, and it's a big deal for Maplewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
No questions at this time.
Councilmember Cave.
No questions, just a comment. I think this is a win-win situation for Maplewood, like Bill mentioned. That's pretty awesome that you were on it from the beginning, Bill. And, it took 20 years, but you get to see it go through. And I think it's a great move for our city.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Ditto. I like Bill, though. I would like to know or hope that there's going to be more to the cardiology services that will be at St. John's in the future. This is a great thing. And if you see what's happening to hospitals, especially on the East Metro, the more we can have here to serve people from our surrounding areas as well, the better off everyone will be. So I hope this is actually just the beginning of what they're going to do with cardiology.
Thank you. It is a great opportunity for Maplewood and for St. John's. We're really pretty happy about it. And for Councilmember Knutson, it's kind of like watching this full circle. So that's kind of an opportunity for you as well. Yeah. Council members, we have two motions before us. Would someone like to make the first motion on page 95?
I move to approve the resolution for conditional use permit amendment, which approves the 21,000 square foot vertical building expansion to be constructed at 1575 Beam Avenue East.
Second. Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the resolution for a conditional use permit amendment, which approves a 21,000 square foot vertical building expansion to be constructed at 1575 Beam Avenue East. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. There is a second motion.
I further move to approve a resolution for a design review for said 21,000 square foot vertical building expansion at 1575 Beam Avenue.
There is second.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve a resolution for a design review for a 21,000 square foot vertical building expansion to be constructed at 1575 Beam Avenue East. Any further discussion? Councilmember Knutson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
Congratulations, Bill. Your kid grew up.
And thank you, St. John's, for your investment, and Fairview as well, for your investment in our city. So moving on, we have two other items, street projects. It's funny that, we've got snow and cold outside, and yet we are talking about street projects that are going to be coming in, as soon as the weather turns nicer. So Mr. Mr. Love and Mr. Jerish, these are yours. Mr. Love, are you going to start us out on this?
Sure, Mayor and Council, good evening. Just want to make sure you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So in the past couple of years, as you might know, we've been doing about 2 projects a year on average, with one being a full street reconstruction and one being a pavement rehabilitation project. Something a little different for this year is both these projects are pavement rehabilitation projects. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. Tonight we have with us our Assistant City Engineer, John Jarosh. He will be giving the presentation here, and both John and myself will be available for any questions afterwards. With that, I'll turn it over to you, John.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Just verifying, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much. So the first project I'm here to talk to you guys about tonight is the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project, City Project 2008. The streets included in this project area are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. The project area is generally bounded by Larpenter Avenue on the north, McKnight Road on the west, and the railway on the south and east. We chose these streets or this neighborhood basically because of the poor pavement condition. That picture on your screen is a fair representation of most of the streets in that neighborhood. The total length of the streets is about 2.79 miles, and they have an average pavement condition index rating of 37 out of 100. So every year the city sends staff out to literally count cracks and assess the condition of the pavement throughout the city. We come back into the office and plug that information into a computer program, and it spits out their pavement condition index rating. And that is on a scale from 0 to 100, with 100 being a brand new street, 0 being essentially nothing left, a gravel road. So this neighborhood averaged a 37 out of 100. Essentially, the pavement has deteriorated to the point where we can no longer effectively patch it. The majority of the concrete curb and gutter in the neighborhood is in good condition, and the utilities, the sanitary sewer, the water system, as well as the storm sewer system are generally good condition. So the real focus here of this project is that failing pavement. We've reached out to the residents in the area in a couple of ways so far. We sent out an informational packet back in December of last year, which included a location map, some information on pavement rehab projects, as well as giving them an introduction to the assessment process. We also hosted a neighborhood meeting back in December of last year, which we had a presentation followed by a question and answer session. We discussed what improvements are proposed with this project, a general project timeline, the cost of the project and funding sources, as well as information on assessments and resident communication throughout the process. If anybody's interested in viewing that neighborhood meeting, it is available on our city webpage under the infrastructure projects pull down. And just to note that we will be hosting additional neighborhood meetings as the project process moves along. So with the project being focused on that street pavement, we're looking at doing what's called a pavement reclamation. So that's a process in which the existing street pavement is ground up and mixed with the aggregate base below to create a new stable base for the new roadway. After that is rolled out and compacted and shaped, we'd install 2 new layers of asphalt pavement on top. We'd look at spot replacements to the curb and gutter. We don't replace all the curb and gutter that has cracks, just curb and gutter that is structurally damaged to the point where it will no longer support the edge of the pavement anymore. We look at doing some minor storm sewer repairs and adjusting utility castings to that finished pavement surface elevation when all said and done. In total, this project is estimated to cost just over $2.3 million, with funding coming from the Street Revitalization Fund, assessments to the benefiting properties, as well as contributions from the city's various utility funds. Looking at the project schedule, tonight we're here to receive that feasibility study. If the report is accepted, we look at hosting a second neighborhood meeting in early March with the idea of holding that public hearing on March 8th. And that will be the meeting at which residents can directly provide input to the council on the proposed improvements. And after receiving that input, the council would vote on the project and determine whether or not to order the improvements. If everything moved forward at that point, we'd host another neighborhood meeting in the April timeframe, look at awarding a construction contract in the April to May timeframe. And if everything's approved, construction would begin in June and be wrapped up sometime in September of the year. And we're also showing that assessment hearing being held in September of this year. Now, in the past, the assessment hearings were held in the spring of the year at the same time as the award of the construction contract. However, due to the COVID-19 situation, the assessment hearings for last year's projects were delayed until the fall to provide additional time until assessments would become payable. And it also reduced the amount of interest that accumulated on those assessments over those summer months. So staff is proposing a similar method this year with the assessment hearings proposed as we're showing here for September. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution, accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparations of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the Montana-Nebraska area street improvements, City Project 20-08. And staff is seeking a recommendation from council on holding that assessment hearing in the fall of this year, similar to what we did last year. And with that, we are available for questions.
Thank you. Let's see if the council has any questions. Councilmember Knudsen.
No questions.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, I heard you say that this project, the pavement condition index would be 37 out of 100. I was wondering if by chance you would know what our streets as a whole, what their average would be.
I don't know what the average is off the top of my head. I know the city's goal is to have 70% of our streets at a 70 rating or above. And as of, I think if I recall correctly, we're somewhere in that 60 to 62% range of our streets that are at that 70 or above right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all.
Councilmember Cave.
Yes, I have a question. Off Larpenteur and Sterling, I know you had mentioned or in your paperwork that you were going to put it off because you were looking at doing a full reconstruction. I know I had some people contact me that, you know, they wanted that done because Sterling is such a busy area. Everybody turns into it. What are you guys proposing for that? Is it something that we can do the type of overlay that the other streets are, or is it absolutely necessary that we do a full reconstruction?
Yes, thank you, council member. So that section of Sterling Street, north of Montana Avenue up to Larpenteur Avenue, there are utilities that need to be repaired in that area, as well as there's no concrete curb and gutter. So that area does require a full street reconstruction to properly, improve that section. We did reach out to our street superintendent and talk to him about that section because we received similar comments at that first neighborhood meeting. We're going to work with him on monitoring that section. If it gets to the point where the patching isn't going to be effective long-term to get us to that full reconstruction, then we'd look at doing a thin overlay of that section just to buy us time until we can get in there and do that full reconstruction.
Okay. And one more question. The full reconstruction, if it were to go through, what's the future on that? I know it says future, but what are we telling people?
Councilmember, I don't believe that project is in our 5-year plan, Steve. If you know off the top of your head, you might have to step in. I don't believe it's in our 10-year projection either at this point.
Mayor and Council, I actually do believe this is in the 5 to 10 year. It's probably closer to the latter. It is an area that, if I remember right, John, correct me if I'm wrong, this is around the time I joined the city. A portion of this was proposed to be a project at one point, and the residents actually requested the project be canceled. And so it has kind of fallen back into a later time frame, but it certainly, I believe, is in our 5 to 10 year plan.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Councilmember Juniman.
Curiosity question. How old are these streets? Do we know?
Councilmember, that's a good question. These streets were put in the late 80s to early 90s. So they're approaching that 30-year mark.
Sure. Okay. And yes, I do remember that whole hoo-ha about the Sterling, and they didn't want it done then. And it's like, my only response is, be careful what you wish for.
Okay.
And those pictures of those streets kind of are convincing, are they not?
They're very convincing.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Road projects are so important.
Yes.
And one other point too, I talked with Melinda about this. Mr. Love, do you want to just explain how our franchise fee, we have 2 new council members, how the franchise fee that was voted in by the council, I don't know, a number of years ago, since I've been on the council, how those franchise fees fit into this?
Sure, Mayor and Council. So if we rewind the clock a number of years ago, the big question was we were getting a lot of requests on doing more improvement projects at the same time, without generating more fees or without raising the taxes. And so I worked with Ellie and I worked with the Excel, and there was a gas and electrical franchise fee that was established. It has helped us increase to where we're doing 2 projects a year. Primarily, we're using these funds for these pavement reclamation projects. We have a number of streets throughout the city that were experiencing this pavement stripping issue. wasn't unique to Maplewood. It's actually pretty common around the neighboring cities. It's where the pavement is kind of coming apart at the top surface, and it's very hard to patch. And we actually had a request from residents, a lot of them living in the South Leg, about addressing that. And the franchise fees were a direct result of that. And I know we've done a number of projects, and I believe we're going to have addressed many of the streets down there at the conclusion of the next project that John is going to be speaking about. But over the last several years, we've been making a heavy investment in that south area with these reclamation projects.
And in terms of the funding source, the franchise fees is noted as the Street Revitalization Fund. Is that right?
Mayor and Council, that is correct.
That's really for new council members, because you may not be aware of that as to where that funding actually comes from. So thank you, Mr. Love, for that. We have two recommended actions tonight. There is a motion. Does one of the council members want to make that motion?
I move to approve, excuse me, the resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing at 7 p.m. on March 8, 2021 for the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-08.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve a resolution accepting the feasibility report concerning the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's vote. Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And the second recommended action is to provide staff with the recommendation on holding the assessment hearing in September of 2021. Mr. Love, I take it it's a recommendation and we don't need to actually vote on it? Is that
Mayor and Council, yes, that's correct. As John stated, this was something we did in response to COVID for our last year's project. Seeing that we're still in those situations, it seemed fitting to bring this council for recommendation on doing the same thing this year.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay.
And this is actually a cost-saving measure for our residents. Can you explain how that works, Mr. Love?
Mayor and Council, yes. So after the assessment hearing, there's a 30-day period where before interest starts to accumulate on the assessments. And when we hold our assessments in the springtime, then 30 days after that assessment hearing, all summer long until we certify the assessments to the county, there will be interest accumulating along with this. Many cities actually hold their assessment hearings in the fall. By doing so, we essentially eliminate that additional interest that would have accumulated throughout both the summer and the fall.
So in terms of a recommendation, I'm in support of it. We'll go around and ask the council. Councilmember Knutson.
I support it.
Okay. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Yes, supported.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. We move on to our last agenda item, the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Love and Mr. Jerish, this is yours.
Mayor and Council, so I will right away turn this over to John to begin the presentation.
Thank you. John.
Sorry about that. Hold on just one second. There. Now can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So the second project I'm here to talk about is the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project, City Project 20-09. The streets in this project area are also shown on the right-hand side of the screen. These streets are generally bounded by Linwood Avenue on the north, Sterling Street on the west, Southcrest Avenue on the south, and Dennis Street on the east. Again, these streets were chosen due to the poor pavement condition. This picture on the right-hand side of the screen is generally representative of what we're seeing out there. This project totals 2.55 miles in length, and these streets are a little bit worse. They have an average pavement condition index rating of 34 out of 100. And again, this pavement has deteriorated to the point where we can no longer effectively patch it. The concrete curb and gutter is also in fairly good condition, and the utilities are also in fairly good condition in this neighborhood. Similar to that last project, we sent out an informational packet to the residents in the area back in December of last year. It had that project location map, information on the proposed improvements, and then general information on the assessments. We hosted a neighborhood meeting for this project on December 22nd of last year, which included similar information to the other project. And this presentation or neighborhood meeting is also available on the city webpage if anyone wishes to view it. On another note, that additional neighborhood meetings will be scheduled as we move forward with this project. Again, we're looking at pavement reclamation, so grinding up that existing failing street pavement, mixing it into the aggregate base below to create that new road base, installing 2 new layers of asphalt pavement, doing spot replacement of the deteriorated concrete curb and gutter, and then making minor repairs to the storm sewer and utility castings. Overall, this project is estimated to cost just shy of $2.1 million. It's also proposed to be funded by the Street Revitalization Fund, those gas franchise fees, as well as assessments to the benefiting properties and contributions from our various utility funds. So tonight, the council will look at receiving that feasibility study. If we move forward after tonight, we'd host that second neighborhood meeting in early March, hold that public hearing on March 8th. And that will be the meeting at which the residents could provide you direct input on the proposed improvements. At the end of that meeting, council would vote on the project and determine whether or not to order the improvements. If it moves forward, we'd host another neighborhood meeting in April, look at awarding a contract in the April to May timeframe. And construction, again, begin in June and be completed by September of the year. And we are also proposing this assessment hearing to be held in September of the year. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparations and plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the Southcrest Ferndale area street improvements, City Project 20-09. And again, we're looking for that recommendation on holding the assessment hearing for this project in the fall of the year. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Council members, do you have any questions? Councilmember Knudsen.
No questions.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
No questions.
Councilmember Cave.
No questions.
Councilmember Juniman. Councilmember Juniman.
Sorry, no questions, but I think the neighbors are all going, please, 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 please. Do the pictures.
Is there a motion then?
I move the resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications and calling for a public hearing at 7 p.m. on March 8, 2021 for the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09. So.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation and plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing concerning the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's take a vote. Councilmember Knudsen.
Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Council members, we concluded our agenda and we got a lot of business done on behalf of the city. And once again, I marvel at our ability to continue without being in the same room together, but on Zoom. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. And I'm going to give every council member an opportunity again to make any comments. It's the close of our second meeting of the year. Councilmember Knutson, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight again that mental health outreach program. And again, talking about the community paramedics, on Wednesday, I'm going to present to a major health plan an idea we've been working on in my organization for quite some time, including paramedics and mental health. What's interesting about it is, in spite of what we think is an aggressive strategic plan, I can't keep up with Maplewood. They're way ahead of me. So anyhow, it's with much appreciation. I like it to represent Maplewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
No real comments today. Just thank you and enjoying digging in here with everybody virtually.
Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
Just a quick comment on the task force. I think everyone did a great job. And once again, staff, you guys are doing a great job. So it's great working with you. Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, we made it again, didn't we? And a night like this, when we do this much, is really convincing that we can keep going. And if almost anything is going on, we can still keep going, which is a very good thing. Just a note on the whole COVID thing, being in that age bracket where we're eligible to be vaccinated. Let me say, if the rate it's going, the rest of you better be looking at August or September. It's one thing to say you're in the category. It's another thing to have the stuff available. How sad is that? But they're organized and we're moving forward and we're hoping for the best.
Thank you very much. And I would like to, there's one omission in terms of thanks tonight, and that goes to Chad Burgo. I understand that he spent several hours at Fire Station 2 hunting down photos of Steve Lucan for that film presentation that we had tonight. So thank you, Chad, for all of your work on that. That really was a remarkable video. It's going to be a keepsake for Steve Lucan and his family because it captured, boy, those were some pretty old photos. And that was really fun to be able to see that and share those with everyone. And Steve will really appreciate that, I'm sure. So with that, council members, thank you all. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Councilmember Juniman, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Everybody stay safe.
Stay safe, stay healthy. All right. Good night, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.